Imagine losing out on a massive career milestone, not because your work wasn't good enough, but because of a glitch. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really gripping case study of corporate cover-ups. We're going to see how a completely innocent administrative error, literally just a mundane calendar hold, was actually a highly calculated tool for witness isolation. If you've ever wondered how toxic office politics operate behind the scenes and how people practically get erased from their own hard work, well, you absolutely need to hear the story.
And you know, strategy lead Maya Carter hit the nail on the head right away. Her core philosophy is that toxic office culture almost never announces itself with some grand villain speech, right? It doesn't just storm into the room. Instead, it hides out quietly in the most boring administrative details. It's an unremarkable file property, a quiet little timestamp, a standard meeting invite. Maya operates on this one specific rule. When something looks completely normal, but the people in the room are acting undeniably tense, you need to look a lot closer.
So, let's dive into part 1, the harmless calendar hold. What seemed like just a minor process issue.
This situation perfectly captures the terrifying duality of a corporate cover-up. On the surface, you have this official narrative perfectly designed to soothe everyone in the room. You hear warm, polished phrases like fresh start and team alignment, making it sound like everyone is just happily moving forward together. But beneath that carefully constructed surface, the metadata tells a much colder, harsher reality. The raw file properties clearly show that the owner field was deliberately changed and a mandatory approval step was just bypassed altogether. It's the ultimate example of how a verbal explanation can be engineered to sound so much cleaner than the actual document itself.
To really grasp the gravity of what happened to Operations Coordinator Sofia Lane, we have to call this exact tactic what it actually is: witness isolation. It's the intentional exclusion of a key contributor from critical review meetings using administrative barriers. By mysteriously keeping Sofia out of that final decisive review, the perpetrators ensured that her context, her voice, and ultimately her credit for months of grueling work could just be quietly erased from the project. This wasn't an oversight, folks. It was an extraction.
Moving right along to part 2, hunting for the footprints. Treating logs as actual proof.
Now, Sofia wasn't burdened by the toxic habits or all the unspoken rules of her company's past. So when she saw this discrepancy, she didn't just accept it and move on. She started asking some highly inconvenient questions. She wanted to know what exactly changed in the system, who specifically altered the record, who authorized that alteration, and crucially, she asked the most dangerous question of them all: who gained power when that record changed? She absolutely refused to let polished corporate language distract her from the cold mechanics of what was essentially a theft.
Which brings us to IT audit specialist Jordan Price, who enters the picture acting almost like a digital forensics detective. He drops this brilliant insight. Malicious actors in the corporate world bank entirely on our collective fatigue. They literally rely on the assumption that nobody will actually bother reading the raw background data. They assume we're going to look at a dropped meeting invite or a calendar hold, sigh, chalk it up to a software glitch, and move on, instead of rolling up our sleeves and digging into the system logs to find the truth.
But they didn't count on executive assistant Nina Ross. She knew that background work always leaves a foreground trail. She pulled the system logs and laid out a completely undeniable timeline that completely shattered the whole glitch excuse. Step 1, a private, undocumented reminder was sent by a senior manager named Derek. Step 2, that specific action triggered a calendar hold to be auto-created by the system, strategically blocking out time. And step 3, Sofia was subsequently blocked from attending that critical final review. All of a sudden, we aren't looking at an innocent glitch anymore, are we? We're looking at a documented, sequential operation.
All right, part 3, excuses meet the evidence. This is where the old story tries to fight back.
When confronted with this mounting evidence, the company predictably deployed what we call the language of erasure to protect its own. They tried to wave away the findings by throwing out these highly polished buzzwords, talking about the need for alignment, the importance of timing, focusing on efficiency and team outcome. They were essentially begging the system and the investigators to just forget the anomaly for the sake of maintaining a false peace. They even disguised their pressure as mentorship and career advice, warning the team not to turn a quote-unquote small administrative detail into a massive political war.
But then, analyst Aisha Morgan totally flips the dynamic in the room with one devastatingly sharp question: who actually benefits if this stays classified as harmless? It's a brilliant defining move because it immediately takes an abstract harm and makes it dangerously specific. You see, a corporate lie survives really comfortably when the harm is vague and generalized. But that exact same lie collapses the very second the beneficiary of the theft is forced to be named out loud. Which leads us to part 4, the boardroom reveal, the absolute climax of the mystery.
The executives in the room desperately wanted to retreat behind the comfortable excuse of an isolated mistake, just brushing the whole thing off as a one-time error. But then, Nina dropped the kill shot, a confirming second record. She brought forward a delivery receipt that definitively proved Derek's private, manipulative reminder. That second background record confirmed the pattern. It proved without a shadow of a doubt that this was deliberate, systemic architecture, not just a wacky coincidence. You can argue away one record as an anomaly, but 2 records? That forms a clear path of intent.
And Maya just laid the proof out on the boardroom table, page by page. The timestamps, the omitted names, they did all the talking, illustrating the massive public impact of the theft. She didn't raise her voice. She honestly didn't need to. She simply looked across the table and said, "I am not asking you to trust me. I am asking you to trust the record you created." She wasn't asking for blind faith. She was demanding unassailable accountability based on their very own system logs. Because the damage to Sofia's credit and reputation was incredibly public, Elise and Maya flat out refused a quiet, silent patch. Often in these situations, leadership just wants to issue a private apology behind closed doors to make the discomfort vanish. But Elise and Maya understood a vital core truth. A private fix leaves future employees fully exposed to the exact same trap. For true justice in the workplace, the correction had to be just as public and visible as the initial erasure.
And that brings us to part 5, writing the new rules, putting architectural protections in place.
HR manager Linda Park realized that just punishing a single bad actor wouldn't solve the real issue. That only ends the immediate scene without fixing the stage. Instead, the trust committee completely rewrote the workflow with mandatory auditable footprints. They established a permanent defense protocol. Step 1, preserve the calendar hold as evidence. Step 2, attach a public reason code to any changes. Step 3, immediately notify the affected employee. And Step 4, log the public correction. They brilliantly turned a glaring vulnerability into a robust architectural defense for the entire staff. This was a massive paradigm shift for the whole organization. I mean, the old toxic culture had constantly relied on private fixes, silent patches, and names being quietly erased from major projects. It absolutely thrived on unaudited calendar manipulation. The new standard completely flipped this, demanding public corrections whenever damage occurred. It required that credit be restored permanently on the official record, backed by strict, inescapable logging of witness availability. It was the journey from a culture of avoidance directly to a culture of absolute accountability. Out of this entire exhausting ordeal, one hard, unbreakable rule was born. Witness availability absolutely cannot be manipulated by calendar holds. But what makes this outcome truly powerful is that this new standard wasn't just a policy sitting unread in some dusty HR handbook. It was immediately tested and applied without exception to a senior leader. It proved to everyone that true reform is a living standard, one that actually survives executive fatigue and protects the people doing the actual work. Finally, Sofia's name was put right back exactly where it belonged on the public credit report, because true workplace repair requires permanence. A private fix might calm the nerves of anxious leadership, sure, but it does absolutely nothing to repair the career trajectory of the person whose name was erased. Naming the work correctly isn't just an administrative courtesy, it is the fundamental way a company proves it can learn, adapt, and genuinely protect its people. In the end, the metadata won. Not because it was loud, but because the sequence was preserved and analyzed with cold, objective clarity. This entire case study offers a literal masterclass in fighting office politics with hard, indisputable data. The truth didn't need to shout to be heard. It didn't need to throw a tantrum. It just patiently waited in the logs for someone thorough enough to sit down and read the story it was telling.
So the next time you see a supposedly harmless process glitch or a calendar anomaly at work, maybe take a much closer look. Ask yourself, who benefits from that speed? Who benefits from you not checking the logs? And it really makes you wonder, in your own office, are your digital footprints patiently waiting to tell the truth? Thanks for joining me for this explainer.